Hey guys, it's Danny. Well, it's almost the 1st of August and you know what that means. It is time to recap the orchids we had in full bloom during the month of July. And yes, the title of the old series is back. It never actually went away, just the title was changed, and that was a mistake because I managed to confuse quite a lot of you guys and I got a lot of comments asking me where the Orchids in Bloom series went. Well, it didn't go anywhere, I just changed a little bit the format. I will actually link the previous 2 episodes down below in the description just in case you missed them. But yeah, the old name of the series is back. The improvements that I made on the series remain. You guys really enjoyed those. But also, I got a lot of comments asking me to keep the voting system, and here we go. Voting system is back, so you can vote for your favorite orchid at the link in the description. So with that said, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it, and why not subscribe? I post 3 times a week currently. And with that said, let's just get on it because we have a lot of orchids to go through. Okay, so let's start with some Phalaenopsis. My pride and joy, the Phalaenopsis bellina has been in full bloom during this month, and look at that, she opened 2 flowers at the same time pretty much, which never happened. Now, my bellina suffers or used to suffer from the orchid flake virus, which got transmitted by the spider mites many years ago. And this is the first year when I don't see those very ugly chlorosis spots on the leaves. I still have some issues on the leaves, she's not perfect, but she looks so much better and I love it. I almost let it go in the past because I didn't think she would recover, but she did. So as weird as it sounds, she is my little token of hope and I really enjoy her. Bonus, she has one of the best fragrances in my entire orchid collection. Very fruity, very yummy. Everybody who loves polychilous type Phalaenopsis should have this orchid. Next up, here we have the Phalaenopsis Zheng Min Muscadine M5, which I gave the cultivar name of Boihar. This is in memory of one of my subscribers' mother, and I think it fits it wonderfully. And I love this orchid. It is a more golden version of the bellina, let's say. At least this is how it looks to me. The bellina is one of its parents. The fragrance is not identical. I feel like the Muscadine still has a fruity vibe to it, but it's just a little bit different, a little bit more woody, maybe like an apricot. But then again, keep in mind, fragrances and the way we interpret them are very personal. You might not detect anything that I'm saying. But anyway, next to each other, these 2 orchids look absolutely fantastic. I so love the contrast of golden yellow and this really vibrant pink fuchsia color. I love admiring these 2 orchids side by side each morning. Then let's look at some Brassicea type orchids. Here we have the Brassada Mivada in bloom once again on the other growth. We had this one in bloom a couple of months ago and she managed to put out another flower spike and I absolutely adore it. Well, to be honest, I adore all of the orchids that I have in my collection, but these ones that have golden, orange, red colors, I kind of like a little bit more than others. Doesn't mean I don't like the other ones, but these are my color palettes. This particular orchid doesn't have a fragrance. I do detect a sort of dusty fragrance, if you will, but nothing to write home about, nothing to bother you anyway, and it takes the exact same care as any other Oncidium. Next, here we have the Bratonia Shelob Okika, which is actually the Shelob Tolkien, but variegated. If you're an older subscriber, you might already know this orchid. It always blooms so beautiful. It is a very big orchid, and soon enough I will have to repot it. And this year it has bestowed 2 beautiful flower spikes full of lovely spidery flowers. All of the Oncidiums that I will present to you today pretty much take the same care. There are very little differences in between them, to be fully honest. And 99% of my Oncidiums are grown under my LED light. Only the Oncidium cherry babies actually receive sunlight or natural light. All of the others, just LED light. They're not even grow lights, my LED panels, just your typical warm daylight color temperature, and they seem to do just fine. Now on the screen you see another Shelob, but apparently this one is the yellow variety. It's called Golden Spider or something of the sorts. Isn't she a little copycat? Well, this is the first time this orchid blooms. I purchased it as the Shelob Tolkien. It does not have variegated leaves, but it should have had purple flowers. And I researched it, and apparently there is a yellow version of the Tolkien. It looks kind of like a Brassia Shooting Star or Brassia Eternal Wind, but it is actually the Shelob Tolkien. And it does bloom just as impressive. Next, here we have a no ID Oncidium, which bloomed on a secondary spike. Now, Oncidiums don't do that. The vast majority of the times when the flower spike is done, it's done. It's still gonna stay green for a little while or a few months, but it's not going to put on a secondary spike like the Phalaenopsis do. However, once in a blue moon, just like Cattleyas and Oncidiums can sometimes produce a keiki, they can also produce a secondary spike. And this is what happened with this one. But the secondary spike is kind of impressive for what it is. So this orchid was in bloom a couple of months ago, and after the blooms fell, the flower spike started to yellow, but I did see a node starting to swell. So I cut it and waited to see what happens, and behold, look what happened. Again, do not expect this from all of your Oncidiums. It happens once in a blue moon. It's not necessarily normal, but it's not gonna harm anything. Next up, here we have the Oncidium Heaven Sent Redolence, in bloom again on a new growth. This guy blooms fast. If you know cherry babies, you know they take a small eternity to open their flowers. Well, this one doesn't. The flower spike grows kind of fast, the blooms open fast, it is much more compact than the cherry baby, which is one of its parents, and the chocolate fragrance is there. My greenhouse smells like chocolate at the moment. It is a very powerful fragrance. I would not advise those of you who have scent sensitivities to buy this orchid unless you know you're not going to be bothered or you can keep it somewhere else. It's one of those orchids which will perfume the entire room provided it gets warm temperatures and good amounts of light. I won't insist on the care aspect because it takes the same care as all of the other Oncidiums, but as I was saying, the cherry baby types usually sit on the south side of my greenhouse. These are the types of Oncidiums which I discovered bloom better with increased light. All the others though, even the Brassias, which are supposed to be highlight orchids, they do just fine under the LED panel. And to end the Oncidium saga, here we have the beautiful Oncidium Cherry Kutu City Low Cherry. And if you don't know the history with this orchid, I actually received 2 separate no ID Oncidiums from Orchids Deluxe last year, and I thought they're the very same plant. I pot them together and they were the very same plant. But as you guys know, sometimes you can have quite a little variation in between the same variety. So here we have one of them blooming with more purple flowers and the other more pink or white flowers. I was considering splitting them up, but you know what? I enjoy it. I enjoy this little unsymmetrical vibe it has. I typically like symmetrical stuff, or I don't even know how to put it in words. I like things to be proper. I don't know, but I'm starting to enjoy this, even though it makes no sense. But anyway, the little cherry is a very similar orchid to the Twinkles. It's not so prone to having those spots on the leaves. If you know the Twinkles, you know what happens to the leaf tips. This guy is not so prone. It has a bit of a fragrance, it's very sweet, but it's not powerful at all. The Twinkles smell much more powerful than this one. Alright, so from the Oncidiums, let's move to the Cattleya types. And here we have Brassavola Yellowbird. I bet you forgot I had this orchid. Well, it was very sit back. And look at her now. She is in her full glory, just opening up her first bloom after the setback. We could do much better than this, and I am expecting in the future a better flower show. I do have another flower spike in the back, but I'm so happy because this is one of those orchids that I've always wanted. I acquired one. It really wasn't in the best shape, and it took a while. I could absolutely not make her like semi-hydro or self-watering with leca, you know, those setups that I tried in the past. So I switched her to organic, Still, I should have made a more water retentive medium. I need to water her a lot, but she's doing good. I might have called her a Brassavola, but she's actually a hybrid. But since she has Brassavola in her parentage, you guessed it, she's fragrant during nighttime, and the fragrance is beautiful. It's a little soapy or detergenty, but in the best possible way, very similar to any other Brassavola, and I adore it. I love the colors, I love the orchid, I love the fragrance. Next up, here we have a surprise. Can you recognize the orchid? Maybe not. This is the Cattleya Purple Cascade, and this is the first time that I have it in bloom during the summer months. I do believe the first 2 times it bloomed, it was winter, and the flowers looked very typical for a purple cascade, but now that it's summer, the flowers look a lot different. The splashes are super wide on the petals. The orchid herself is doing great. The fragrance is still beautiful. She smells like roses to me, maybe with a little bit of citrus. So the orchid is the same, but those splashes changed. I think it looks much better like this. The contrast is more evident, but I do believe the flowers can actually look different depending on the temperature or the season. She's a very tall orchid. I keep her outside, she enjoys it, she grows much faster outside, and as I see, she can bloom multiple times a year. Next up, this beautiful lady here is my pride and joy when it comes to Cattleyas. This is Lady in Red. Can you believe she was a flower shop find? Sometimes you just have to be the right person at the right time and you will find something like this. It took me a while to find the ID for this one. The only source is the Greek Orchid Society, and the exact same orchid is described as Lady in Red. If you look at the Blue Nanta website, there's no picture for this particular cultivar, so I don't know what to make of it. It is an old hybrid. I'm hoping that it will appear more in flower shops, but I don't know. The color though, the color is out of this world. She does not have a fragrance, that's the only drawback, but that red fills my heart with joy. I love this orchid almost just as much as Princess Jackie. Next little Cattleya is a no ID that I saved a few years ago from the flower shop. She did not have any flowers. I did not know how she will look like, and here she is. She's a very typical pink lavender type of flower shop Cattleya. If you're from Europe, you might know what I mean. It's a very common variety. What I love about it is that it's so incredibly vigorous. It grows super fast, blooms multiple times a year, and bonus, it has one of the best fragrances of life. Yes, she's a very common and maybe not so spectacular hybrid. Oh, but the fragrance, you guys. It's a mixture of lilac with roses, with citrus, with, I don't know, it's a mixture of perfectness, in my opinion. I still prefer the Princess Jackie because it's interesting, but this one, if you love floral fragrances, you will adore the fragrance of this orchid. So regarding an ID, I'd rather not put an ID on it. There are so many lavender hybrids on the market. It's hard to really tell you an ID, make you buy it, and then you be disappointed that it does not have a fragrance. Just take an image of it. If you see it in the flower shop, take a sniff, or go ahead, take the plunge and purchase it. I just don't want you to order something that you expect to be very fragrant and it's not. So that's why I'm not gonna put an ID on it. It's way too complicated to correctly identify it. Here we also have the Brassavola Jiminy Cricket in bloom, which I have such a special place in my heart for because it's an orchid my mom chose. She saw it in a flower shop, which is unheard of, I know. But again, if you're the right person at the right time, sometimes you find good stuff at the flower shop. So again, as you might expect, she's fragrant during nighttime. since she is a Brassada hybrid. And mind you, for the ease of talking, I'm not gonna go through exactly how the name changed, whether she's a Rinco Vola, Rinco whatever Cattleya, I don't care at this point. You'll have the proper names in the little info card. I'm just gonna call them as they come to my mind. So this one produces pretty big flowers. They're not colorful, they don't need to be, because in the nighttime you don't need color, you need fragrance. And I can assure you the fragrance is magical and super, super powerful. I love this orchid. This year she produced 2 flowers, one of the buds fell, sadly, but I did have another flower spike on another growth, so she is doing a lot better than she used to, but it is a pretty old orchid, which sadly I did manage to set back a lot when I moved to this country. But now she's a-okay, so I'm happy. And the last little kitty we're gonna look at is the beautiful Chantilly lace Twinkle, which is in bloom once again, but not on the original direction of growth. It's a different direction of growth. The other direction, which bloomed previously, took a little break. I don't know why. Maybe the eyes have an issue. But anyway, she is in bloom once again, and apart from the absolutely exquisite little flowers, this one has an exquisite fragrance. It smells like the Princess Jackie to me. It has a very creamy quality to it, a little bit soapy, but in the best way possible, a little bit citrusy, a little bit like roses. It's so hard to describe. I absolutely adore the fragrance on this orchid. It's very, very similar to the Princess Jackie, so I'm pretty sure they share a parent. It's an easy grower, grows multiple shoots per year, blooms multiple times, takes the very same care as any other Cattleya that you saw today. Alright, so the next orchids will not belong to any category, they're miscellaneous. Here we have a Neophonetia hybrid, and in my opinion, it is the best Neophonetia hybrid I've ever seen, because I've only seen one, this one. Okay, so this is the Ascofinetia Peaches. And look at that color, it's a beautiful coral color, which changes a little bit as the flower ages. When the flower first opens, it's a really vivid red coral color. As it ages, it becomes a little bit more peachy, which I'm guessing gave the name of this hybrid, but in my opinion, it should have been called Ascofinetia corals, not peaches. But anyway, beautiful, beautiful hybrid, easy to care for, blooms every year, and look at that flower show. There is also a little bit of a fragrance, but I wouldn't expect much. It's a little bit sweet. It doesn't linger in the air. It doesn't smell at night either, my particular one, and I care for it just like I do my other Vendacious orchids. Next, here we have the Dendrobium parishii, which is in bloom now in July. And this is weird because typically it's in bloom in May, June, the latest, but now he's a little bit late with the blooms. Better late than never. This is a type of dendrobium that takes a winter rest and then it blooms on bare canes in the springtime theoretically, or in the middle of summer, because why not? But the flower show is beautiful. Bonus, it is a very fragrant orchid. It smells a little bit like raspberries. I'm sure others will find it a little bit different because it does have a quality to it that I'm sure will make you detect other types of fragrances, but it is a beautiful, beautiful orchid. Next, here we have the Epidendrum radicans variety orange. I'm not sure if it's a pure radicans or it's a hybrid or a cultivar. It is a reed stem epidendrum. I have him on the terrace in the heat. He adores it. These types of orchids do enjoy heat and they grow very well in very bright light. And this guy is no exception. I really, really like the orange flowers and the globe-like inflorescence. He takes the same care as any other reed stem epidendrum. I do have a tutorial, check it down below in the description. The only drawback is that it's a pretty big orchid, it's pretty tall, and I will try to keep it on the terrace this winter, sheltered from the winds, but theoretically he should be able to handle the temperatures because these guys are getting a little bit too large to bring back in the greenhouse, and if I could just keep them on the terrace all the time, that would be great. Next up, here we have the Coelogyne usitana, and this is her second flower, and I have bad news. I think the flower spike is withering off. It is the first flower after her recovery. She was very set back. I do have another growth which is producing a flower spike. So somebody actually asked me how many flowers the usitana ever did for me, and I don't think I actually got more than 2 or 3 flowers. But mind you, I grew this orchid since she was a seedling, and then I managed to set it back pretty bad. So all I got were kind of seedling to mature stage flowers and set back flowers. So I never actually had good, strong flowering. Theoretically, it could actually produce 20 flowers or so. Mine didn't, but hey, here's hope for the future because the new growths look spectacular. She's not a fragrant orchid, and she is much better enjoyed if you look at her from below because the flower spikes are pendant, but she is lovely. Another one of my pride and joys is the Bulbophyllum Daisy Chain crossed with purpurascens. I think I called it Daisy Chain all of this time, but it's actually a hybrid. The Daisy Chain looks just a little bit different. This hybrid between the Daisy Chain and the purpurascens gives actually this daisy aspect to it more so than the Daisy Chain. Anyway, this little orchid is breathtaking. So whimsical. Bonus, it does not stink. It smells actually pretty good. It smells like grass and flowers. I don't know how else to describe it. The downside is that the flowers are not long lasting. They last a few days, 5 days tops, which is so sad because I would love to have these little daisies dangling in the wind all the time. But the good news is this orchid can actually rebloom, and it does send out typically quite a few flower spikes throughout the summer, at least for me. So this year I got a really good bloom show, and obviously the more pseudobulbs this orchid produces, the more flowers. So I'm really looking forward to future blooms. Alright, time for a Miltoniopsis, and yeah, it's not the best bloom show ever, but it's a bloom show nonetheless. So this Miltoniopsis was actually pretty affected by thrips. It still has a lot of damage. I'm still treating it. It managed to bloom, but the blooms were cut pretty swiftly because they did have thrips, and really when you treat the blooms, they fall anyway, so I just removed the flower spike. I do have another Miltoniopsis that looks a lot better. It will be in full bloom in August, but the bottom line is I'm starting to do pretty good with Miltoniopsis. It's still a struggle, don't get me wrong. If I would have cool temperatures all the time, I would have a much easier time with them, but in lack of that, the cool setup that I have works pretty great. So I'm happy about that. Miltoniopsis are not beginner orchids. I cannot really recommend them to anybody because I know the hardship that goes with them. You can do okay with them for a while, and then if something is off in their environment, they will let you know, and they can spiral out of control really fast. They are prone to all sorts of pests. They really dehydrate fast. They don't like hard water. They don't like certain types of medium. It is very fragrant though. It smells like roses. Next up, here we have the Dendrobium harveyanum. Okay, so when it comes to care, I'm not very sure with this orchid. This is a new orchid for me. I used to have a harveyanum many years ago, but I managed to lose it. It wasn't the easiest orchid to grow for me, and this is because supposedly it is a cooler growing orchid. So when it comes to care, I'm just gonna reiterate what I find in the internet. Keep in mind, it is not my experience, and we all know how that goes. The internet can be very wrong sometimes. But I can tell you that indeed it's not an easy orchid for me to care in this environment. However, with the new cool growing setup, I'm hoping to have better success because I adore the blooms. They look like dandelions to me. They even smell like dandelions, which I'm sure not many people will detect, but Either my mind wants them to smell like that, either they have a bit of a soapy smell, I don't know, one of the two. I do really love this Dendrobium, and I'm hoping that next year I can have better information to give you from my own experience. Now, I don't have a lot, but I did want to show you these beautiful blooms. And in the same bucket as the harveyanum is the Odontoglossum naevium. Again, I don't have experience with this guy. I'm just telling you whatever I can find on the internet and what I'm basing my care this year, but it's not my own experience. So this again should be a cooler growing orchid. I do intend to put it in a terracotta pot, put it in the cooler section of my greenhouse and see how it does. But since it arrived with a flower spike, which did not wither off, and it decided to bloom, I wanted to show you the blooms because they are spectacular, phenomenal. I love these blooms so much. I'm a sucker for intergenerics and Odontoglossums and Oncidium types and all of those beautiful things, and this one does it for me. It's beautiful. I hope that it will do okay. So far it looks okay. It doesn't seem to suffer all that much temperature-wise, but I don't know, we're gonna see what happens next year. It doesn't really have a fragrance. I think I can detect something very close to the flower, but I don't know how to describe it. It's not perfumey, so I would not keep my hopes way too high for it. It's just beautiful though. And that's about it for today. I think there are 20 or 21 orchids to vote for, and because some of you suggested I do this, and I think it's a good idea and very reasonable, here's a little recap. And as you see on the screen, the orchids, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the reason behind changing the name of the series. So you might know that I am the type of person who likes to control her own life. I don't like to leave stuff up to chance, and I really like the way I am. I am where I am and I do what I do because I wanted to, and I put my efforts into this direction rather than wait for stuff to happen. However, there are things in this world that I cannot control, things that none of us can control, and what's happening to the world right now is one of those things. And being so far away from any family and feeling so useless, I have to say, kind of messed up my mind a little bit. So I took it out on myself, of course, and on the things that I can control. And one of the things is my YouTube channel. And I decided I'm gonna change everything because I can. And it wasn't a great idea because some stuff are good the way I made them. No matter how much I think they're overused right now, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you guys still enjoy them. And I saw that from the feedback that I got. You really didn't like the idea of me renaming this series. So I decided that what makes the series is not the name, is me. I do it in the way that it is. I decided to try and just accept the things as they are and really just do my best because look at all these things I can control, right? So yeah, that was the whole reason behind it, but I'm kind of over it at this point and I'm just gonna stick to what I started. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed this month's orchids. Don't forget to vote for your favorite one down below. I will not open polls for the previous two videos, but that's okay, we're just gonna take it from here. And with that said, I hope you have a great weekend. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. So I'll see you all next time. Bye!